Hello and welcome to the Mets in the UK podcast, your home for Mets content in the UK. Reminder, you can catch our podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and all good podcast hosts. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and X at Mets in the UK, or you can use the hashtag MITUK to get involved. Now, this evening, we've got another episode in our guest series. As always, joined by my wonderful co-host, Toria. How are you doing this evening, Toria?
Evening. I'm a little worse for wear, but energized by the Soto press conference that we just had.
Exactly. Happy Soto Day, everyone. Happy Soto Day. We are also joined by the boss herself, Tracey. How are you doing this evening, Tracey?
I'm good. How are you, my love?
I am good. Yep. Also feeling energized off the back of that Soto press conference. So this evening, we are continuing the guest series with someone who is very well known on Mets Twitter. If you are not following him already, why not? He is a fantastic follow. He is a 3-time Sports Emmy winner, Matt Searle. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing? Obviously, we just watched the Juan Soto press conference, so I assume everybody's in a very upbeat mood.
Yeah. Absolutely. Just fresh off the bat of that, what were your thoughts on the press conference?
I'm so excited for this deal. This obviously getting a player of that caliber on your team, only 26 years old. I think everybody should be thrilled by this signing, and really, I don't think it's hyperbole to say a monumental day in Mets history. So I'm as excited as anybody could be, and I think you can feel that reverberate throughout the fan base right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very exciting times to be a Met fan, especially in the next 5 years at least, if not the next 15 with that Soto deal. So just to kick things off, if people haven't come across you before, other than my intro, can you tell us a little bit about what you do for the Mets and how you came into your role with them?
Absolutely. So I work for the Mets productions team. And so I work all 81 home games at Citi Field, and I have a variety of responsibilities, but most of them have to do with posting statistical information for the scoreboard, as well as writing trivia questions, writing scripts for on-field ceremonies, such as the 50-year anniversary of the 1969 championship team. I write those notes that you see when you walk through the Jackie Robinson Rotunda on game day, and you see the lineup and the notes shuffling through each of the players. So I am in charge of a lot of the statistical content that you see on the scoreboard and on various screens throughout the ballpark. So I've been doing that since 2018, late 2018. I began my career at MLB Network. Right out of university at Emerson College, I received an offer from MLB Network to be a researcher, and I worked there for 7 years, mostly working on the highlight show Quick Pitch, and that's where I won those 3 Sports Emmy Awards that you mentioned before. And in late 2018, the Mets were looking for a few statisticians to add to their productions team to really enhance the overall ballpark experience. Obviously, the team was owned by the Wilpons back then, but this was the first in the process of adding people to the productions team to give fans more of that electric ballpark experience that we're seeing grow even more now. So I was brought on in late in the season in 2018. One of the first games I worked was David Wright's final game. And I've been a full-time employee since, and I love working for the Mets, and it's really a dream come true because not only am I a lifelong baseball fan, but I'm a lifelong Mets fan. I grew up in Connecticut, but so I could have either been a Yankee fan or a Red Sox fan easily, but my dad was born in 1962. So he was born in the same season that the Mets were born, and he really felt a kinship to that underdog mentality, and he kind of passed that on to me. So I'm very thankful for that, and I'm so thankful to have this position now, to be part of an organization that continues to grow and continues to improve each and every year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got to be fantastic with the new scoreboard at Citi Field, seeing you work on such a big scale, everyone around the ballpark benefiting from that work that you do.
Absolutely. it's so funny. The old scoreboard seems so quaint now. You see the pictures of Citi Field even just from a few years ago, and now you see this giant scoreboard that you can almost see from space almost. And so it just magnifies everything that we do. And of course, it puts a little more pressure on me because I know that not only do I never want to make an error to begin with, but now if I do something that someone catches, it's going to be way more obvious because it's out there just for everybody to see, and everybody's going to take a picture of it and tweet it. So it's kept me on my toes, but it really does add a lot when you see the highlights and the replays and everything that we do on the scoreboard, including our in-game show.
Yeah, it's definitely special. Definitely, if you've not been Citi Field, it's definitely special.
Absolutely.
So speaking about the scoreboard, do you have a favourite scoreboard message that you've done, and how far are you allowed to push the boundaries on those?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do a little bit of light trolling, some gentle nudging of players every once in a while. I think this year was probably my favorite because unprompted, I decided to troll Cody Clemens, outfielder for the Phillies, the son of Roger Clemens, of course. And nobody said, hey, Matt, tweak Roger Clemens' son a little bit, remind the fans of how much they dislike Roger Clemens. But I just thought it would be funny to do little notes that reminded people of Roger Clemens' struggles against the Mets. So I did Roger Clemens' career ERA against the Mets, and Mike Piazza hit .421 against Roger Clemens for his career, and just a few notes like that. And the ESPN Sunday Night Baseball broadcast picked up on it, and a lot of people tweeted about it. So it was fun to generate that conversation and just have a little bit of playful fun in regards to an opposing player. And I don't know if Cody Clemens noticed it, but hopefully he had a sense of humor about the whole thing. As far as as far as how far we can take that, usually I run that stuff by my boss, Brendan McKeon, but there's some flexibility there. I think what it comes down to is you just don't want to be disrespectful. Everybody knows that it's baseball, it's sports, it's light, it's fun. But obviously you don't want to say anything that might be too personal or that could actually get under someone's skin. So in this case, I thought it was fair game because I was just pointing out some facts about Roger Clemens against the Mets. But obviously there is a bit of a fine line. And if I'm ever unsure about how something might be perceived, I would always rather be safe than sorry. So I will always run those things by my boss and just say, is this okay? We're not going to get in trouble for this. And hopefully it gets approved.
Yeah, there's certainly been some fun stuff that we've noticed over time. And you're right, especially now with social media, something like that is going to make it out there, and it's going to get everywhere. But that just means that we all get to enjoy it, even if we weren't there. It's brilliant. So you mentioned that you are doing the 81 games a year. What do you do? What are you doing now? What do you do outside of your work with the Mets, and how do you keep busy during the off season?
Well, that's a great question. Right now, I'm kind of in a transitory phase. Like I said, I used to work for MLB Network. So from 2018 till 2022, I balanced both those jobs. I was living in New Jersey, and basically the entire baseball season, either I was at the network or I was working for the Mets. And I had very few off days, and the commute from New Jersey to New York was sometimes rather unpleasant. So after 2022, I decided that I was going to put my efforts focus myself full time on the Mets. And so I moved to Queens, and that's where I live now. Right now, I'm doing some freelance work, just keeping busy. Also looking for some more full-time statistician jobs. I've applied to a few companies to do statistical analysis and research for live sporting events. So right now, I don't have as much work as I would like, but I'm so blessed to have the flexibility even in the off season to have some time off. Right now, I'm actually traveling. I'm in Lima, Peru. So I've been able to escape the cold New York weather for now, and I feel very fortunate to be able to do that.
Absolutely. And Peru is a fabulous place to be spending a little bit of time. Amazing.
Absolutely. Great food.
Plenty of quinoa.
So one of the things that we've been speaking to our guests on this guest series is off the back of the crazy year we've had with the Mets. 2024 is definitely one that's going to live long in the memory of Mets fans, and some of the others that we've had on the show. Literally just last episode, we had Mike Janella, and he was talking about how it's up there with like 99, 2000 when he was watching the Mets back then. So 2024 was a crazy year. What were your thoughts on it? Do you have a favorite moment from the year as a fan?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would put this up as one of the most fun Mets seasons ever. I have a little bit of a soft spot for 2019. We didn't make the postseason that year, but as I said, that was my first full-time season with the Mets. It was also Pete Alonso's rookie season, so seeing him break the single-season rookie home run record was a lot of fun, and being part of that chase and being able to document and catalog each of his achievements along the way, all the records that he was breaking, not just as a rookie, but in Mets franchise history, was something that I'll always remember. And there were some very memorable comebacks that year. You probably remember the Todd Frazier home run against Sean Doolittle in the Nationals, and Michael Conforto's walk-off hit, and the pulling, the ripping off of the jersey in the post-game celebration. So I love the 2019 team. 2015 is probably one that I would put up there along with this season is one of the best. Obviously, we went to the World Series that year, but there was the Wilmer Flores, the trade that didn't happen, and the Tears of Joy, and the Cespedes trade, and Michael Conforto, and all the, Juan Uribe and Kelly Johnson, all these things that came together in this whirlwind that happened at the trade deadline and the All-Star break, and all those things kind of accumulating at the same time. So I would say 2015 is maybe my favorite, because that was the first year that I started working at MLB Network. So it was my first year really as a professional within Major League Baseball. And so all that is very memorable to me. But this year was so much fun. And I think this year I felt such a connection to the fans, not just through my work at Citi Field, but just going out and going to bars in New York and seeing people dressed up as Grimace, and people wearing the OMG shirts. And you had the fans feeding off the OMG and the way the team was playing. You had the players feeding off the same things, and the players feeding off the fans and each other. And that synergy was something that I've really never seen before in a baseball season, or really any sports season. So I would put this up there. Like I said, maybe under 2015, but the way that this team pulled together and made you believe right up until the very moment that they were eliminated by the Dodgers was so special. And that's what made it so heartbreaking at the end, because I almost didn't want to look my fellow fans in the face. I was so proud of the team, obviously, but I was like, oh, we were so close. You just felt like maybe they had just enough magic. So amazing season, and I'm so fortunate to have been a part of it. I would say my favorite moment would be the Francisco Lindor Grand Slam against the Phillies. Just something I'll always remember. Absolutely lost my mind. Anybody who follows my feed at Searle Baseball on Twitter and Instagram knows that I'm a huge Francisco Lindor fan. So anything that Francisco Lindor does, I'm going to be tweeting about. And when he hit the Grand Slam, I should have been calm and composed and professional, but instead I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I was slam Cisco Lindor, MVP. Everybody just turned around and looked at me, but they understood. They knew where that passion was coming from. So yeah, this season was incredible. The fans brought so much energy. And like I said, everybody was just feeding off each other. They were feeding off Jose Iglesias. They were feeding off the idea of Grimace and that bringing power to the team. So the fact that it ended was tough, but it was special that it happened in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was those likable characters, like you say. It was very easy to get behind this team. They were very relatable characters. I'm so glad you mentioned 2015. That was the year that I fell in love with the Mets with that team. So that team will always be special for me. But yeah, this season has absolutely, without a doubt, been wild. And hopefully we can get something even slightly close to that next year. Would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things about this season was it was just so unexpected. I know that after they fell to 0-5, a lot of people were hanging their heads and saying, "Oh, this is going to be a long season. Wow, only 157 more games left." And when they were 11 games under 500 in May, a lot of people, I'm sure, were thinking, "Well, it's just going to be another forgotten season, something that we'll have to live through." But that ultimately is just going to be another disappointment in the long history of the franchise. But the way that the team rallied together and said, wait, we still have time. We're better than this. And they turned things around. Everything that happened after that team meeting in late May and moving Lindor to the leadoff spot and those wins in London as well, or that one win in London. I think all that happening and just the team pulling together the way they did is what made this season special. It was totally unexpected, and that's really the beauty of baseball, is that as hopeless as things can seem sometimes, there's always enough time until all of a sudden there isn't, and that's something that this season really proved.
Yeah, this side of the pond, we like to take a little bit of credit for some of the British air and that London visit, kicking some of this off and giving some of that team building and contributing to that success in the second half of the year.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was great. And that London series, I wish I had gone. I've been to London once. I went around Christmas time in 2016. Went to the Kew Gardens, had a really nice Christmas setup. And I'm a history buff, so I went to the Churchill War Rooms and learned a little about World War II and all that, and the Blitz and all that. So it was so great to take in that history. But yeah, I really think those games in London, when people were saying, "Oh, look at how great the start the Phillies have gotten off to, and look at the Mets, they're really struggling." But that game-ending double play by Luis Torrens in the second game of the London series, I think, kind of gets lost as one of the turning points in this season, because after that, you thought, okay, maybe this team's better than we've been giving it credit for, and maybe they're better than what their record has shown. So those London games definitely were an important part of the season.
So it's obvious you're really passionate about your Mets fandom. Tell us a bit about your origin story and how you got into baseball.
Yeah, I love baseball. I think I'm unusual among a lot of sports fans in that I specialize in that I don't really care or follow a lot of other sports that closely. Now, I do like to travel, and when I travel, I do like to attend sporting events. For example, I went to a football match in Argentina, or as Americans would call it soccer, but a football match, Boca Juniors against their arch rivals, River Plate, and that was just an incredible experience at La Bombonera, the Chocolate Box Stadium, really incredible. So I do have appreciation for other sports, but in terms of sports that I care about and dedicate myself to, baseball really is it. And the Mets have always been a passion of mine and a focus. And that really goes back to when I was young. My dad is the reason that I'm a Mets fan. My father, like I said, was born in 1962. So he passed down that Mets fandom to me. But in terms of loving baseball, I think it began around when I was 8 years old, around 2001, Barry Bonds chasing the single season home run record. Obviously, that wasn't Mets related, but it got me into baseball, and I started collecting baseball cards. And I grew a very large collection. Every Christmas, my dad would get me a full top set of baseball cards. And so I would go through the laminated pages that he would put together for me, because he would put together these binders with cards in laminated sheets. And so I would flip through the binder and just read the back of all the cards. And I would memorize the stats, and I would memorize all those little fun facts that they would have. And that's really what grew my baseball fandom. So even before I watched games on a religious basis, I just fell in love with the stories and the numbers. And then that year, again, not a Mets-related thing, but the 2001 World Series between the Yankees and the Diamondbacks was a classic World Series. A lot of comebacks and dramatic home runs. And, of course, Luis Gonzalez with the walk-off hit against Mariano to end it. So that was when I think the baseball bug bit me. And I was hooked from then on. And, of course, then I started channeling my efforts into the Mets. And baseball is just something that has been a constant part of my life. I think I love the fact that it comes in bulk. It's not something like American football where you have one game a week and everybody just decides, all right, on Sunday I'm watching my team and that's my one game a week that I'm focusing on. I love that that baseball is a nightly soap opera, and that for 162 games over 182 days, spanning from the spring into the fall, you can tune in at 7:00 every night, or 1:00 or 4:00 on weekends. I'm using American times here, or Eastern Standard Time, but and that they're going to be there. And I think that consistency for me is something that gives me a routine, even at times in my life when I haven't really had a daily routine to follow.
Or it gives us a lot of lack of sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is actually one of the struggles of the job, is that I love being at the ballpark and I love the energy, and I definitely absorb a lot of that energy from the fans. But those night games, those 7:00 starts, it's hard to go to sleep afterwards because your mind is racing and you're replaying the top moments in the game. So anytime there's a day game after a night game, I really have to discipline myself and say, all right, I have to get to bed by this time, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to wake up and do the work that I need to do in the morning.
So just off the back of that, do you remember the first Mets game you went to, like in person at the stadium?
Yeah. So like I said, I grew up in Connecticut, so I didn't grow up in New York. But I do remember when I was 8 years old, there was, I'm not even sure who offered this. I think it was an event that was sponsored by my dad's work. And I remember we took a school bus. It was just like a group activity. And we took a school bus to Shea Stadium. And it was a game between the Mets and the Red Sox at Shea. And it was in the upper deck. So I remember we had to pass binoculars around because, as you probably remember, the seats in the upper deck at Shea were so far away from the field that you couldn't see what was going on unless you were wearing binoculars. It's not like Citi Field where you have great sight lines no matter where you sit. So I remember that, and it was against the Red Sox. It wasn't a particularly interesting game. It was 1-0 Mets win. Mark Johnson hit a solo home run, and so they won 1-0. Glendon Rush, I think, threw 8 shutout innings, 1 hit, and it was a somewhat significant game because it was Bobby Valentine's 1,000th win as manager. So there was a milestone achieved there. But yeah, it wasn't a particularly fascinating game, but I got to absorb the ballpark experience, and I really loved that. And I think, yeah, that was another part of my development as a baseball fan, was getting that first in-game experience.
Yeah, I think you never forget your first visit to the ballpark, and those of our listeners who have picked this up off the back of the London series, we're very lucky, Toria, Tracey and I, that we've been to Citi Field, and we honestly cannot recommend it enough. If you are thinking of going over, absolutely, it's worth every penny flying over and catching a game in person. And like Matt said, you never forget that first visit to the ballpark.
No, you can't beat that feeling. I've been there, and now at City, the walk down the steps off the 7th line, coming down it gets me every time. I've lost count how many times we've done it, but it never ever gets old. In all of your fandom, Matt, whether it's as a fan or through your work, I guess you've come across a number of players and members of staff. Is there anyone in particular that you've enjoyed interacting with or talking to or working with most?
Well, I will say that Ron Darling is someone that I've had very good interactions with. I first started working with him at MLB Network because, as you know, he's also an analyst over there at MLB Network. And so when I was a researcher over there, I would give him stats. I would provide him with whatever research he would need before he would go on air. And Ronnie is, as you would expect, as a Yale graduate, he's highly intelligent. He does a lot of his own research. He's always extremely informed. So my job as a researcher with him was always easy because it wasn't like I had to supply him with a lot of information for him to come across intelligent on screen. He obviously is naturally intelligent, but he's also just a very classy guy. He's never haughty or anything like that. Sometimes you don't know a former player if they're going to have a big head, if they're going to be pretentious, or if they're going to be rude to those that they might think are beneath them. But Ronnie treats everybody the same. So I can say I've always had very positive interactions with him. I know you guys interviewed Colin Cosell recently. I have a very nice friendship with him. It's funny because when I first started working at the Mets, I wasn't nearly as outgoing. I think I was just a little bit shy. And so I didn't talk to as many people as maybe I should have, introduced myself and network as much as I should have. So I remember when I first had my first real conversation with Colin, he said, "Oh, I thought you hated me because you just never talked to me." And I was like, no, I never found an opportunity to start a conversation with you. And then we just started chatting up, and obviously he's a great guy with a wonderful sense of humor, very witty. So Colin and I have a nice little friendship. So one of the things I do at Citi Field is, in addition to my other responsibilities, is that I'm also responsible for putting the birthdays and the welcomes on the scoreboard, those messages that run in the fourth inning, around middle of the game. And so, throughout the year, Colin was not the worst offender of this, but he would send me messages. "Oh, I'd like to wish a happy birthday to so-and-so. I'd like to welcome this friend to the ballpark." And it was no problem. I said, "Oh yeah, no problem." But he's also very appreciative of that. So he owes me a bottle of tequila for doing those favors. So I'll have to have him pay up before next season starts.
Yeah, I remember there was a time when his newborn daughter was on the screen, and he almost on the big screen, and he was very, very pleased about that.
I'm going to use that as an excellent opportunity to remind our listeners, if you've not checked out the other episodes in our guest series, including Colin Cosell, you can find them on our Spotify and YouTube. If you head to our YouTube channel, Mets in the UK, we've got a special guest series podcast playlist where you can check out all of the other episodes featuring the likes of Colin Cosell, Wayne Randazzo, Mike Janella, and many, many more. So, Matt, earlier in the episode, we were talking about baseball statistics. You've got that history there with MLB and with the Mets. How did that come about in the first place? Did you sit down with sort of like a paper score sheet like we sometimes see people do at the stadium? And if someone's listening and they think, I'm quite a statistical person, I like analytics, I like facts, what would be a best way for them to get into that if they wanted to get started?
Yeah, I mean, that is a great question. I would really just say, actually, what I would say is that numbers are important. Obviously, I work with numbers, and I have to keep track of certain statistical achievements and milestones that occur throughout the season. But I also think that writing skills are very important, and that people should focus on honing their communication skills before they focus too much on the numbers, because there are a lot of people that can crunch numbers. There are so many people that are produced by Ivy League universities that are coming out, and of course, some of them have economics degrees, and they're highly educated, and they're great with the data, and they know how to comb through the data. But I think in order to set yourself apart from the other competitors in what is a very difficult industry to break into, it's important to be a strong communicator. So that means not just speaking eloquently, but also just honing your writing skills. The reason that I was able to break into the industry was that in university, I focused on writing as much as I could, showing that not only could I take numbers and understand them when it came to the game, but I could digest that information and spit it out in a narrative form that people could latch onto. So I had roommates that had their own sports commentary website, and I would do guest articles for them. And so when MLB Network was looking for prospective employees in 2015, right when I was about to graduate from Emerson College in Boston, I had a whole lot of writing samples that I could give to them. And that was what ultimately impressed them and gave me the opportunity to break in. So as far as like numbers, I would just say being passionate and always asking questions. For example, if you're watching a game and Mark Vientos, you notice he has 12 RBIs in the 2024 postseason, asking questions like, okay, is that a franchise record? Which it was. It tied John Olerud and Curtis Granderson for the most RBIs in a single postseason in Mets history. Always just ask yourself, is this rare? Is this exceptional? Have other players done this? Have any other Mets players done this? Have any, in some cases it might be, has a rookie done this? So I think just having that inquisitive nature and that thirst for more knowledge, that's what's going to drive you forward, even more so than just scoring a game or having basic knowledge of analytics.
Yeah, and if someone's wanting to sort of look these things up, like what is the most RBIs for a postseason, like you just said, are there places on the internet that people can go and do that? Obviously, you can type it into Google, but are there baseball-specific places you'd recommend to sort of try and find out these facts and figures?
Absolutely. The number one site I would say would be Baseball Reference, and I would say that if you want to pursue a career in baseball research or stats, as I have, that it is in no way a bad idea. In fact, it's something I would recommend. Would be to subscribe to Baseball Reference, because you pay a small annual fee, but it gives you the ability to use their stat head database and to retrieve numbers. So, for example, if I want to know how many switch hitters in Mets history have hit 30 or more home runs in a season, I can easily go to Baseball Reference and use their stat head tool, and knowing how to run that search, I can retrieve that information. And so using that has helped me enormously throughout my career. And that is probably the research or the resource I use the most. Through MLB Network, I also have some connections at Elias Sports Bureau. So their website is also very useful. And if you have connections over there, they're a good tool to lean on. But I think Baseball Reference is a great starting point, because you can do so many of those searches yourself. And once you learn how to use the tool and retrieve information from the database, the world of baseball statistics really becomes your oyster, and you can answer so many questions that you might have as you're watching a game.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice, and thank you so much for sharing that with our listeners.
Yeah, no
So,
problem.
Matt, you obviously enjoy your travels. You're on your travels at the moment. Is there somewhere that you've not been so far where you would like to go and wear your Mets gear, repping the Mets as you go?
Yeah, definitely. And that would be Japan. I've always wanted to go to Japan. Obviously, amazing baseball culture. So I would love to go to a game at the Tokyo Dome. That would be number one. This has been on my bucket list for a long time. It was funny because my ex-girlfriend, she does a lot of traveling. And I remember one year she decided, all right, I'm going to do a little bit of traveling in Asia. And she ended up going to games both in Tokyo and in Seoul, South Korea. So I was very jealous that she got those international baseball experiences. But hopefully one day I'll be able to go to Japan. I just haven't quite fit it into my calendar just yet, because ideally I'd like to go during baseball season. So maybe one year when the Mets are on the road before the All-Star break or directly after the All-Star break, I can use a week or two to go to Japan and have a little more time there, because I'd like to be there for at least 2 weeks or so, just to get as much of the culture as I can.
Cool.
So I don't know if you've seen any of our prior episodes. In this instance, it's perhaps best if you haven't, because we keep 3 questions back, quick fire, to wrap up all of our guest episodes. Nothing that's going to trip you up. And in fact, you kind of touched on a couple of bits already. But just first thing that comes to your head, no need to think about it. And it's all, it's based around your Mets fandom. So first things first, your favorite Mets player, past and or present.
So as I led on before, and as I'm sure many people know, my current favorite, Francisco Lindor. I was a huge fan of him, even going back to his Cleveland days. So the day that he was traded, and then when he ultimately signed that contract extension, that was monumental for me. So current favorite, Francisco Lindor. All-time favorites, I would say my first favorite Met was Mike Piazza, but I would say that Johan Santana, I will always have a great love for. I loved watching him pitch. Even before the no-hitter, I was just an enormous Johan fan. So I would say past Johan Santana, current Francisco Lindor.
Good answer.
Look at Tom's happy face there.
I'm very happy with that one, yeah.
Okay, second question. What would be your favorite Mets moment? Doesn't necessarily have to be one that you've attended, but just overall.
I would say Wilmer Flores's walk-off home run against the Nationals. Everybody remembers that in 2015 when he was almost traded. And, of course, the tears of joy and him picking at the jersey and the Mets logo really showing how much he wanted to be a Met. That will always live in my memory. And I was fortunate because even though I didn't work for the Mets at that point, I was working that game and I was in the ballpark because MLB Network was doing it as a showcase game. So I was in the press box, and I think Bob Costas was doing play-by-play. And so I was on the ear, had the headset on, and I was talking with him on the mic and giving him the numbers throughout the game. And of course, like I said, when you're in the press box, there's that rule, no cheering in the press box. You got to be professional, not supposed to show any sort of partiality at all. But of course, sometimes you just have to let your fandom bleed out a little bit. And I was very excited when Wilmer hit that home run. So I would say that's probably my all-time favorite.
Yeah, I was there for that game as well. It was amazing.
Special moment for sure. And finally, you have Steve Cohen's checkbook. You can do with it what you will. You can sign any player to any position. Doesn't have to be a free agent. Do what you will with it. Who are you signing and why?
Oh man. I think I have to look more at the available free agents right now. Well, I guess on a sentimental note, I wouldn't mind if they brought Pete Alonso back. I don't know exactly what that contract's going to look like. Yeah, I'm trying to think just if any player were available. Let me see. I think we're good at catcher. Third base is looking good. Shortstop, we're obviously fine. We got right field settled. Man, that is an excellent question. Yeah, maybe bringing Pete back just as a sentimental favorite, because I would love to see him break the franchise's all-time home run record, which he would do if he came back for at least one more season.
Yeah, 100%. Love that. Thanks,
Yeah,
Matt.
I think it'll be interesting to see if Pete does come back in the coming days, especially now Soto is off the market. He's officially a Met. It'll be interesting to see what happens next with Pete and his free agency.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Pitch, because you can never have enough starting pitching. Roki Sasaki, that would be a great signing as well. And I know the Mets really have interest, so we'll see if that happens. But obviously, sometimes I'm motivated by sentiment, as many fans are.
Okay, so that brings the episode to a close. As a reminder, if you have enjoyed today's episode with Matt Searle, please give us a like, subscribe, follow, comment, all of that good stuff so we can continue to bring this Mets content to people across the UK, Europe, and beyond. all that leaves me to say is, once again, thank you, Matt, so much for joining us and sharing your baseball stories with us. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm always glad to be a guest. As you can see, I'm very passionate about baseball and the Mets, so I relish any opportunity to talk about them. All I would say is that this is an exciting time to be a Mets fan. You have one of the most revered executives in David Stearns making decisions as the president of baseball operations. You have Steve Cohen, a man who has shown that money is no object when it comes to securing the best talent available. You have, to my own horn, you have in-game entertainment at Citi Field, which I think is among the best in the big leagues, if not the tops. So it's an exciting time to be a fan. I'm so happy to be part of the community, and I can't wait to see people at Citi Field in 2025. And if you see me at the ballpark, don't be afraid to say hi.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well,
And we will link to your socials in the tweet with the link for the pod. Please give Matt a follow. He is a very entertaining follow on the socials, and get that feeling of what it's like to be at Citi Field. So with that very passionate ending, I say thank you to Tor, thank you to Tracey for joining us this evening. And all that leaves us to say, let's go Mets.
let's go.
Let's go Mets.